Old powers waken, shadows stir. An age of wonder and terror will soon be upon us. An age for gods and heroes.
The glass candles are burning, and you're listening to the Obsidian Nights podcast. Hello, my sweet summer children. I'm back with the juice to get you through the long night. And on today's episode of Obsidian Nights, where we go through A Song of Ice and Fire, chapter by chapter, we're doing A Game of Thrones, Eddard 11. And I have the Obsidian Knight, resident Obsidian Knight here. Justin Thomas from Top Shelf Fandom, also editor of this podcast.
Yeah, resident Obsidian Knight. I actually put that down in the census. The little census.
Is that on your LinkedIn?
Yeah, they immediately brought me in for interrogation, and rightfully so. Rightfully so. Yeah.
So Justin is here. We're going to be cracking into Eddard 11, and I'm going to start off by reading the opening of the chapter. Through the high, narrow windows of the Red Keep's cavernous throne room, the light of sunset spilled across the floor, laying dark red stripes upon the walls where the heads of dragons had once hung. Now the stone was covered with hunting tapestries, vivid with greens and browns and blues, and yet still it seemed to Ned Stark that the only color in the hall was the red of blood. He sat high upon the immense ancient seat of Aegon the Conqueror, an ironwork monstrosity of spikes and jagged edges and grotesquely twisted metal. It was, as Robert had warned him, a hellishly uncomfortable chair, and never so more than now, with his shattered leg throbbing more sharply every minute. So this chapter opens up in the Red Keep, in the throne room of the Red Keep, and Ned Stark is sitting on the Iron Throne. And let's just talk about the Iron Throne really quick. So the Iron Throne was forged of the blades of all of Aegon's enemies. And in the books, the Iron Throne is actually way more monstrously big.
It's a monstrosity.
Monstrosity. It's huge. And it's like steps that you actually climb up to that are also made of blades.
Yes.
So we'll put an image on the screen if you're watching this on YouTube. If you're watching this in podcast format, just envision a big, huge chair that has steps carved into the actual chair. Yeah. So the Iron Throne was forged by Balerion the Black Dread, and Robert tells Ned it's uncomfortable. And it is uncomfortable. It should be.
It's uneasy wears the throne, right? It's the burden of power, in which George is like, hey, heavy wears the crown is another adaptation of that phrase, but it's, uneasy, blah, blah, blah. The burden of difficulties of a leader and so forth. But yeah, the original one it literally is ridiculous. It looks like it's from a Dr. Seuss book.
Yeah, it does look like it's from a Dr. Seuss book, actually.
Weebles and wobbles.
Yeah, very.
Yeah.
Very. It's not cute at all. Actually, it's ugly.
Well, didn't it kill? It killed. It is accredited for killing Maegor the First, right? And then Viserys the First is accredited with an infection, like sepsis of sorts. I might be speaking.
And then Rhaenyra was cut by it.
Yeah.
So it says if you're cut by the throne, that means the throne rejects you.
Yeah, but it's it's also a faulted piece of
Yeah, it's also a tetanus chair. Yeah. Anyway,
what the tetanus chair cut you? You must be evil. Yeah, there you go. Okay.
Yeah. So basically, Robert has gone hunting because why not? I mean, when has he ever done anything that makes sense? So amidst all of this shit that's going on, the Lannisters are massing armies in the West. The Lords of Riverrun, the Tullys, the River Lords, they're calling their banners. Everyone's calling their banners because Catelyn took Tyrion. Ever since Catelyn took Tyrion, this has been going on. People are gathering their armies. And Ned has to sit the Iron Throne and speak with the king's voice. So he first talks to Sir Carl Vance, is one of the sirs, and there's Sir Raymond Derry there, but he says, Sir Carl Vance, says, this is all that remains of the holdfast of Sharer, Lord Eddard. The rest are dead, along with the people of Wendish Town and the Mummers Ford. So, they're all kneeling. These are all villagers that have come to King's Landing, and they want to, seek justice.
Yes.
And for what has happened to their homes and their places of business or whatever. So basically what has happened is their villages have been pillaged. Their establishments have been burned. Their women have been raped.
Yes.
And set on fire. People were killed. I mean, it's awful what happened, actually.
Yeah, it is a societal retribution in which Eddard personally felt at the hands of, because of his injury, of Lannister soldiers, not of, there's never that one-on-one sword fight in the novels. But
and for Jory, his men. Ned loves his men. He thinks about Jory all the time.
So under the king's authority, there is still this insolence that happens, meaning the Lannisters have struck out against the Starks. And now since Catelyn has taken Tyrion, they have struck out against the Riverlands, because what we have is a lot of peasants coming forth saying, and it's amazing to me, and this is why I love this series that you do so much, and I'm so grateful to you for doing it, is because I understood for the first time upon re-listen, even though I read this book 5 years ago, that they say they didn't have any banners. Mm-hmm. That the Mounted didn't have any right. How many times is that cited? It's at least 7 to 10, maybe even more, up to 50.
Yeah, because Tywin isn't Tywin's not stupid.
Yeah, but at the same time, it's the Brotherhood without banners is formed by this destruction without banner, because it's this unclear line within society in which I almost just wish, and I'm sure so many other people too, and please comment below, I just want to know what I almost wish Ned would have took this decision, not to jump ahead, to Robert, even though it's obviously not something that could happen because he won't be alive. But what would Robert do with this clear indication? But at the same time, Ned just got stabbed. Jory just got killed, right? And he did nothing. So would he have done anything? What do you guys think? And what do you think, right? Because
I don't think
that's what bothers me, because he takes this opportunity, to strike out on his own and make people, that are maybe not as attached to him go, and it's justice versus vengeance and all that.
He didn't do anything when Jaime got into his scuffle with Ned, and Ned is the hand of the king. Ned is his best friend.
So it's foolish for me to think.
So right? I doubt he's going to do anything about these lords burning shit in the Riverlands.
I know. And in my mind, I thought that I just want to ask somebody, because I feel like he might have, but it's so unrealistic, right? To think that he would have.
One of the interesting things in this chapter is that the people that are coming to the court don't even know what Robert looks like. Mm-hmm. They don't even know what their king looks like. They think Ned is the king. And Ned can't believe it. You don't know.
Somebody that grew up so close to King's Landing doesn't know. He's I kill everybody up in the north. So, they know me. But it's not necessarily that. But yeah, I found that to be interesting too, that he found it to be absurd that this man grew up I forget how the phrasing is, or the actual verbatim, but he said exactly what you just said. He's this man that was just a hillside away, or per se, he doesn't know what Robert looks like. It's well, the north is vast, right? I mean, come on, they all know what you look like, Ned. But he is the detachment of the centralized unit of society and actual power is quite apparent in this actual chapter.
Yeah. And to the banner thing. So the people are they didn't have no banners. They weren't flying any sigils. They didn't have any special armor, but there was one that was
a monster,
a giant.
Yeah.
A giant. And they're it's the mountain. It's Gregor Clegane.
Yeah.
And the whole courtroom, courtroom. Well, it's like a courtroom, but it's a throne room. The whole court like starts whispering and shit, like, oh, what the fuck's about to go down?
Yeah.
And they were like, people were scared. Like the villagers that were there were, kind of scared.
People leave that courtroom.
Yeah.
Like
they leave.
They leave it to go run. And Ned looks at that. He's like, are those Cersei's? Are they scared? Are those Cersei rats? Like, no, those are rats. Those are this court is high school, people. Elevated times 100.
Yeah. And then you have Maester Pycelle, who's there, like, why would Sir Gregor turn brigand?
Yeah.
By the grace of his liege lord, he holds a stout keep in lands of his own. This man is an anointed knight.
Yes, which is important because Ned, I'm sorry, I keep interrupting. But
no, I was just going to say that Pycelle also, like, urges Ned Stark to, like, take, like, that Tywin Lannister is Cersei's father.
Yeah, like, hey, dude, like, chill out.
Yeah.
Like, keep it cool. Like, this couldn't happen. He's like, no, man. Like, first off, like, people are just killed. I was messed up, and now this is happening.
And Ned fucking says, thanks for stating the obvious. Like, basically that's what he said. Thanks for stating that. I fear we might have forgotten that if you had not pointed it out. Like, and I feel like Ned is getting more quippier.
He's getting
more like more irritated with the people of King's Landing.
Absolutely, because what he does here is this is an ennobled person, meaning the mountain. So if we're looking at this within the constructs of the contemporary times in which, like, blah, 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 you got like the War of the Roses, right? 1400s, blah, blah, blah. So the mountain, he disennobles him here. And he actually goes about due process without due process and actually sentences him to death on pure just aesthetic, description alone, which would be a contrived account of what happened. We know it's what's happening, right? We know Tywin's taking these actions, but everything is doing things, and he's trying to take control in this situation. And you brought this up to me when you pitched this to me. Not that you had to pitch it hard. I love doing this. But you're like, no, this is the time that is smart. And you're right. He is. But there's also a folly in his way because you just can't avoid it, because he is trying to take control of the situation and do things under Robert's name, right?
Yeah.
Make it so that the Lannisters, and he's disennobling him by actually sentencing him to death. And he's making sure to only send 25% of the contingent of troops, that are Stark men, which actually I kind of found a little bit foolish, to be honest with you. But also he's used to passing the sentence himself, right?
Yeah.
And you have Loras Tyrell, which is like that whole vengeance versus justice argument comes down to Loras, who is 16, and he looks at as a surrogate for Robb, right? It's foreshadowing for what's going to happen in the story about, oh, I'm not going to let this boy go to battle, even though we saw at the tourney, right?
Yeah.
That he's capable, but it doesn't matter because Ned is thinking more. Like you said to me in private, you said, no, this is what Ned is thinking. And you're right. He's thinking pragmatically. He's thinking intelligently. He's taking all the steps he can.
If you think of Loras Tyrell, though, like Loras Tyrell is not ready to go to war with the Mountain. He's not. Like, he's good at tourney. He's good at jousting. Okay. But to go to war, to go head to head with the Mountain, to lead a party to the Riverlands and chase down the Mountain, like you have Beric and like the Brotherhood, like these older guys that have been to war and have been around a couple times. Like Thoros of Myr is the psycho, and like they can't even get the Mountain. You think Loras Tyrell?
Well, it's and Varys speaks to this at the end of this chapter. Is actually a smarter political move, and we know through Renly and Robb's allegiance. And this is all hindsight, people. In Gray, you're bringing up a perfect point, right? Like at the time that I don't think that he's incapable. Mostly though, because that Loras's name, the reach goes along with it. So to have that alliance that we actually strive to have before Stannis sends a shadow baby, which if you like duality and you have, Beric's, lightning, sigil, you're right. Right. But it is a lightning. He strikes. It's like a blitzkrieg of sorts. All jokes aside, let's do this. All jokes aside, there is, his sigil is the lightning strike. And he is from the Stormlands, right? House Dondarrion. And he is going into this, you know, in a semi Robin Hood matter. And he is sending as many like nonpartisan people as possible.
Yeah.
I think that in the show, people don't really get it because Beric Dondarrion, just like Arthur Dayne, in my opinion, from like the 1,000 feet up perspective that I always look at story from, meaning the macro view, he is another hero of another story, right? That might get killed, but he keeps getting resurrected too. And they're like, what does resurrection mean? He's like, I have no clue. They keep doing it to me though, because they didn't 6 times to him. And John's like, I don't know either. So like they have him do it, but like I
do agree that it should have been Loras, not to fight the mountain, but to make, you know,
the alliance,
because that alliance, like if you're gonna fucking, like Varys says, like if you're gonna beef with the Lannisters, the second
better come with some forks,
better come with the Tyrells. Like it'd be good to have the Tyrells on your side. And like we see that the Red Wedding, or not the Red Wedding, the Battle of the Blackwater,
that comes to fruition.
It comes true. Like the Lannisters get the Tyrells by promising Marjorie.
But it's Eddard sees in the POV, he sees
a boy.
Rob. He sees
Rob,
16 years old, right? And Beric, this old man of 22, which, my God, Gray, come on, for this chapter, I'm like, oh, I feel so old now. I'm in my 30s. You know what I mean? He's 22 years old, an old man, I guess, because he's not promised. It was Beric ever, you're the lore savvy one, what's up with his marriages?
He has a wife or fiance. He can't really remember her.
Well, that's
because died and came back to life so many times.
But there was an arrangement made, right?
Yeah. So I wanted to talk about one thing. So Ned sees Sansa in Septim Mordain in the court, like, and he gets like this flash of anger, like this is no place for her. And I feel like he's so wrong there. Like this is exactly where she needs to be. Like she needs to see what is going on. Like she needs to see these things because at the end of the day, like she's naive and she doesn't understand politics. She doesn't understand these things. And like that's why she's always behind the ball because she hasn't really been taught. Because
he's protecting her.
What does
a protector do? But it harms her because you're absolutely right. But as a father, he looks at this as, no, I'm going to make sure this never becomes a problem for her. And I'm going to solve this. So he thinks, oh, why is she here? But that you're absolutely correct. That is the detriment of Sansa. But at the same time, that's what happens when people try to shield you.
Right. Well, I will say that this is the chapter, like I told Justin before we recorded, this is the chapter where I feel like Ned has got his bearings about him. Like he's not being stupid. He's not being outright stupid as he is in the next chapter. But this chapter, he does something that I feel is very well thought out. And that is he sends Beric and them and Thoros of Myr and Lothar Mallory. It's a couple guys. He sends like 20 men to the Riverlands to get the mountain. But he does it. He tells them to go under the King's banner.
Yes.
So they don't fly the Stark banner. They don't fly their own banners. They take the King's banner. Because if they take the King's banner and the mountain attacks them, he's essentially attacking the king, which wouldn't then force Robert to do something. So I kind of feel like Ned didn't think that Robert would do nothing. And that's why he waited. He didn't want to wait for Robert to come back. And that's why he went ahead and sent him under the King's banner. Like, okay, Robert, you don't want to do anything. You want to sit in this chair. You want to drink. You want to fuck. You want to do all that. Well, they've attacked your men under your banner. What are you going to do now? And then Robert, loving war the way he loves war and battle the way he loves battle, Robert would have went to war.
Well, yeah. And it's very... It's so, this is the biggest, this comes to such a, like, and I really want to know what people think, because I know there's people that have just dove into this far more than I have, including you, obviously. But when we look at this situation, we're looking at a situation in which he is setting forth a banner under the king, which turns into the Brotherhood without banners, which is susceptible to religious motivation, which is susceptible to the old folklore. We are representative of the people, but they come out representing the king, like you said. Ned he sends 25 of his own household knights. That's the exact number that he sends with them. Because listen, Gregor goes with 100 people. Now it's disputed whether it's 50 or 100, but that sounds a lot more than just like a group of rapscallions per se. Like that is even in this time, that is a formidable force that would be considered a organized attack at the very least, if not a army. If you look at the numbers, I think Whispering Wood had 2,000 versus 4,000, blah, blah, blah. You know, I mean, it's not that low of a number. 100 men of arms, especially knights, you know, to go at people is a formidable force. So Tywin is clearly doing things under the name of King Robert. And that's what we really want to see. But like I said, it's kind of foolish of me and ignorant. And that kind of proves the actual just greatness of George's story, right? Because I still just want to ask you, Gray, I'm like, come on, wouldn't Robert have came back and been like, no, he just killed, like Jaime just killed Jory. You know what I mean? Like it's not like this is any different, to be honest. And also Edmure, we already get the foreshadowing for the insolence or the immaturity, right? Yeah. Of Edmure, because there is another gentleman there from the Riverlands. We have to remember that they're attacking from the Crown Lands, the Riverlands, which is the middle sect of Westeros. So you get the situation in which he sees the incapability of the Riverlands to really support themselves, even though his wife has not went under the Riverlands, you know, to the Vale to start some shit. But she knows that her people from the Riverlands are going to rise up and there's going to be conflict, blah, blah, blah. But he sees like this maturity that he holds to a very, very high level that he thinks, oh no, just like Edmure, they're going to be quick to jump the Valor, but like pretty much, you know, all talk and no fucking action.
Right. And Edmure is green. I'll say he's green. But Ned also does things that are green. Like Ned sends his own guards.
25 of them, which is, I think, is a mistake.
It is a mistake. And he's been doing it since he got there. Like he sent some of his men to be in the gold cloaks. Like he should be massing people around him for protection, like Tyrion does with the Stormcrows and the Stone Men and Bronn. But Ned kind of like disperses them out. Like, here, you go help Janis Slint because he's complaining that the tourney has the city in an uproar. Here, you go to the Riverlands with Beric. But so you're complaining, you're saying Edmure is letting Tywin scatter all his swords that are supposed to defend Riverrun, but to bleed off the strength of Riverrun. But at the same time, you're bleeding off the strength of your own household protection.
In actually going against what his stratagem is, like you said, to separate himself from the difference between justice and revenge. Revenge is purely sentiment filled, meaning this person killed my wife. They are going to get their revenge on them. Justice means you bring balance. That is the difference. So he doesn't care anymore if he actually sends his household guard. So it's either because Loras is the answer. He literally is the answer, because like that is the reach question that plagues us all, right? If Renly truly could have met up with Robb, right? And he's trying to prevent, and that is the total like, oh man, it's just such a, I'm sorry, I can't think of a good word for it, but it's terrible for me to think of because I just wish it would have happened, right? And then it would have been a terrible story that we wouldn't be talking about. But at the same time, like the Reach and the North going together because of the numbers would have been great. Right. And he's just like, no, because that would be revenge, not justice. And justice is what he gets, and it's not so just.
Vengeance, Ned said. I thought we were speaking of justice. Burning Clegane's field and slaughtering his people will not restore the king's peace, only your injured pride. He glanced away before the young knight could voice his outrage, protest, and address the villagers. People of Shearer, I cannot give you back your homes or your crops, nor can I restore your dead to life, but perhaps I can give you some small measure of justice in the name of our King Robert. And that was the speech that Ned gave, and Ned was trying to give justice. And he even says, like, he's uncomfortable. Like, he's like, in the North, you know, we believe the man that passes the sentence should swing the sword, but my leg is fucked up, so I can't. Yeah. So he's not uncomfortable with it, but I definitely think that that was a good move for him to send them under the king's banner. And they kind of tell him like, well, the king's justice is Sir Ilan Payne.
Yes.
But at the same time, Sir Ilan Payne is from House Payne, who was sworn to House Lannister. So you have to do like all these dynamic, like there's a lot of political dynamic that's going on. And I don't know, that kind of wraps up this chapter.
I know. But one last thing, because that's where I forced the hand. Because when push comes to shove, we all got beefs. And maybe you don't want to make your fight somebody else's fight, but sometimes it comes to that. And I think that Ned truly should have took Ilan Payne and put him front and center stage here. Instead, carry out the king's justice. I think reality is, I think he should have made the king's justice carry out the king's justice and see where his allegiances lie. And I think that would have been interesting because there's that ongoing narrative of, because obviously that's the man that takes his head. So because Ilan Payne is visibly unhappy with this. This is his job that they're subcontracting out. So it's not that he's making more enemies at home. Ned just can't win is my point. So like if he just would have named it, what do you think? Do you think Ilan Payne? I am one to think, call me ignorant, call me easily persuadable. I think he would have done it. I think he would have went after him.
I think he would have too.
Yeah, right. I think everything that in the further narrative, when you replace Bronn with him in the actual story thread, that's what I think. I think Ilan Payne would have done it. So I mean, but it's just a fascinating and it's such a foreshadowing moment for what's to come. Unfortunately, right? Like this is Robb. The Reach could do this, and Varys, who he doesn't respect, but for some reason, somewhat listens to Littlefinger. He's like, "Oh, hey there, little man that I strangled," and Varys he's like, "No, Munich."
And the Brotherhood without banners will span from these men.
Yeah. Become a religious cult, a Robin Hood-esque cult. I mean, I like the conversation and I'd like to have it further in a different stream or something like that about them because they have phases. They literally do. They go from like carrying out the justice from Ned in technically the throne, right, to being this religious cult, which is about our lore and blah, blah, blah. And they go through all these different phases and they become greedy, but they're also the personification of the righteous everyman that Robin Hood was, but in George R.R. Martin's world, which is very real, where they need money, where they sell Gendry, right? And all these things. Like, so they are a very fascinating thing. I think they are the most moldable, and it really proves George's prowess and his adaptability and his gardening skills. Or it just proves that he's a manic maniac that just is a genius. Because I don't know, because I think that he sets them out to be a few different things that just tend to work. They tend to work, but they don't match up all that well because they become a different entity altogether, at least 2 times, you could argue for sure, from what they initially set out to be, which there's no problem with because we all do it. So I think it's a fascinating chapter. I can't thank you enough for having me on. And I just, I love rereading this with purpose because you start to think and you start to go on Reddit, which isn't always necessarily a great thing, but it happens, and you start to be like, oh, what is this going to lead to? But no, it's fantastic. And I think that this is the one point in which Ned is Machiavellian, right?
That's strong.
No, I mean Machiavellian. I think that it was an ironically written book, but
that's strong, Justin. Maybe Machiavellian Junior-ish.
Well, I think he wrote the whole book to say this is what you do, idiots, and it was a big joke, to be fair. But I'm saying this is the time in which he didn't show his colors because Ned is Stark means I will do what I do. It's very overt. To me, Machiavellian is ends justify the means. So nothing that he does here is ends justify the means, even though he is smart and he does make a smart move to send those guys to the Riverlands under the king's banner and not under his own banner or anyone else's banner. But at the same time, he's made enemies of Sir Ilan Payne, Loras Tyrell, Tywin Lannister, the Mountain. They see what justice looks like and it looks disparaging, right? Like it looks down upon them in the POV. Like he's like, look at them, they wore their best clothes, still all patched up, not all that great. It's like, damn, Ned, why you gotta hate, man? Like people got to make a living. It's not all the North,
right?
It is, but no, it's a fantastic chapter, and it is his last time and his only time. It's not the Hour of the Wolf.
Yeah,
it is not
definitely. But I like to thank you for coming on. That was Eddard 11, and I will see you guys next week. Bye.